Can you imagine looking into the eye, looking right into the eye of a giant squid? Right there, eyeball to eyeball. And if we can bring it in and have it glom onto the sub, so much the better. People have used the word obsession about my search for the giant squid. I'd rather call it a passion. It's a passion that blends in with who I am and how I do my work and how I've always done my work. And giant squid is one of the things that I'm passionate about. They are the largest invertebrate ever to have lived on the face of the earth. We know they exist, but nobody has ever seen a living giant squid in its natural habitat. Maybe no one will. I was brought up in Rye, New Hampshire, and we lived close to the beach. After storms, lobsters would get washed in, crabs, snails, looking at the seaweed. Very exciting to a young fella. I was so interested in the oceans, in ocean animals, and in boats. I decided I wanted to be a lobster fisherman. At first for other fishermen, and eventually saved enough money that I could buy my own boat and gear. Knowing where the lobsters are means keeping up with them on a daily basis. It's a matter of being observant. I started studying squids my first year in graduate school. My major professor, Dr. Voss, asked me during the final exams what I was going to do that summer, and I said I was going back to New Hampshire to fish. Had a funny look on his face, and he said, "You know, I have a grant from the National Science Foundation to do some work on deep-sea squids. Thought you might be interested." Within a month, I discovered a new species of squid. Once the squids hooked me, that was it.
What is particularly thrilling about squids?
Yeah, I guess a lot of people would think, you know, who could love a squid? There are stories as early as the 15th and 16th centuries, something that was called a kraken, a Norwegian word. This squid of colossal size, inky black and icy cold, that would sink ships, would devour sailors and fishermen. Those stories ultimately are based on some kind of fact. They are big things, about 60 feet in total length. The eyes are located on the side of the head, and the beak or mouth is in the center of the crown of arms. So the mouth or the beak's here, and the eyes back here, and the arms coming out like that. So I think it's appropriate to call them monsters, even though for many years I resisted accepting that term. One morning in 1980, I was sitting at my microscope doing whatever I was doing at the time, working on some specimens. The telephone rang. "Clyde, we've got a squid." Fine, what kind of a squid? Well, he said it's Architeuthis, which is the generic name for giant squid. Someone had seen this mass lying on the beach. By the time Ken hung up the phone, I was on my way to the airport. The skin was braided off, but even so, it was quite thrilling to see this animal literally in the flesh, looking through the suckers, the eyes and the mouth, different parts of the anatomy. Gorgeous. He said, "Do you want the specimen?" Do I want the specimen? Yes. So we came up with a truck, driving down from Boston to Washington with the body, with a 10-foot body in your truck, hoping that the police don't sort of look at you and say, "What are you carrying in that big coffin?" No one has ever been able to measure the suctional force of a giant squid, but with suckers up to 2 inches or more in diameter, they would pull a gigantic hickey on you, multiply that times hundreds of suckers bearing on the surface.
How many suckers would there be total?
On a giant squid, each arm of a fully adult squid has well over 100 suckers. So 100 times 8, that's 800, let's just say possibly 1,000. Now the tentacles, the 2 feeding tentacles, the ones that get very long, capture the prey, instead of being in 2 rows only, they're in 4 and then in multiple rows beyond that. There would be several hundred of varying sizes from relatively small to a couple of inches. If every single sucker came to bear, there would be perhaps 1,500 or 2,000 suckers sucking away on that surface. I wouldn't want to be subjected to that. The largest eyes that exist in the animal kingdom today, and possibly the largest that have ever existed. The eyeball is as big as a human head. They can see so well. Magnificent organs. They translate the intensity of light coming down from the surface into the mid-depths and enables them to turn on their light organs and make the animal disappear. If you can imagine looking at an animal against downwelling light, the body will form a silhouette. That's lunch. But if the squid has the ability to turn on lights that match this subdued sunlight, both in intensity and color, it disappears. And I look, and the squid is gone. Incredible adaptations for survival in the deep sea. The beak has to be an incredibly powerful weapon, very much like a parrot's beak, very sharply pointed, only a small percentage exposed to the water. There's a huge muscular ball that encases the beaks, and on a giant squid, the beaks might be as big as my hands, and the muscular ball would be this big, or even bigger than that. The job of the beak is to take bites very quickly, no chewing, just get that bite and swallow it. Their esophagus goes right through the center of the brain, right in there between the gigantic eyeballs. And then there's a tongue with a radula, a rasp like a file that rams the food down the throat, and it goes down the throat with one-way files on the side through the center of the brain and into the stomach. I know from experience that these animals use their beaks and they will bite in a defensive way.
Your personal experience?
Very personal experience. I've been bitten by several species of squid, including a squid called the Humboldt squid. It bit right through my wetsuit, my dive skins, and my bathing suit. It was quite a gash. We were diving in an area that the year before, two fishermen, squid fishermen, had fallen overboard from a small boat. One of the fishermen was pulled into the boat. As they reached down to get the second fisherman, he was pulled down, he went out of sight, devoured by a school of squid. There was probably nothing left to him but the bones by the time he hit the bottom. You talk to fishermen, they would much rather fall into a school of feeding shacks than into a school of feeding Humboldt squid. They figure they've got a chance with the shacks. There is no chance with the squid. I was on the doctoral committee of a PhD student, and he and his wife had a gigantic meal in their home, and they served squid 12 different ways, and everyone was delicious. Of course, sooner or later, the topic of giant squid always comes up. I wonder what giant squid tastes like. And the student, he said, well, I don't know, but I've got some in the freezer. We took the specimen out and thawed it out and prepared it in a very, very simple way. And when it was finished...
Wait a minute. What is the most simple way of preparing giant squid?
Well, first you cut it up into very small pieces.
Where was the squid found? I mean,
It had washed ashore on a beach.
So this is a rotten frozen squid?
No, not necessarily rotten. It wasn't perhaps the most fresh that you could imagine, but it was all we had. And I just shaved off, sliced off thin slices of it, just sauteed it in olive oil and garlic. There it was finished, ready to be sampled, and I handed it to the student, Lou. I thought he should have the honor of since it was his. No, I'm not going to eat that. It was your idea, you eat it. I did, I tasted it. And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. It was very, very bitter. Ha! There's something in that we need to look at. The tissue contained ammonia. And it turns out that many deep-sea animals concentrate ammonium because it's lighter than seawater and it serves as a buoyancy mechanism. And it means that the giant squids are virtually neutrally buoyant. When the animal dies, there's a journey in death from the depths to the surface of the sea. Were it not for that wonderful biological fact, we never would have had specimens of giant squid to study. Sampling giant squid, wondering what giant squid tasted like, ended up answering the question of why do we find giant squid in the first place? I've tried to imagine myself as a giant squid in trying to determine where they live and how they live and even what they see. Wonderful light-gathering capabilities with two huge eyes, the flashes and the streaks and the glowing of bioluminescent organisms. If I can be excused for being anthropomorphic, I'm sure the giant squid finds it a great place to be.
Find the living giant squid. How have you gone about doing this?
The first expedition used a camera called the critter cam. Our idea was to mount this critter cam onto the head of a sperm whale. We would approach the sperm whales in a sea kayak till you got literally within arm's length, and placing the camera on the head of the sperm whale, let the whale dive down into the deep sea. Hopefully, the images would include giant squid. We got some really stunning footage, no question about that, but unfortunately no footage of the giant squid. Sperm whales are the largest predator on Earth. When they get the opportunity, they will take a giant squid. Tremendous writhing around with the squid being squeezed in the jaw of the sperm whale. When sperm whales were captured, all around the head were these funny rings. There were circular scars from the suckers of giant squid. They sucked so powerfully on the tissue. They leave their mark. They leave their mark. The beaks of squids are made of material very similar to your fingernail, and this is indigestible. Sometimes when biologists open the stomachs of whales, they will find not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands and thousands of squid beaks.
So they're all over the place, in other words.
There must be millions and millions of giant squid. I really believe that. The sperm whales know where they live. The sperm whales know where to find them. If we can determine where the sperm whales go exactly, we're going to be able to find the giant squid. I know we are. I know we are.
This deepened your resolve to find the living giant squid?
The latest expedition took place in early 1999. We used a one-person submersible, which was essentially an acrylic sphere, and got some really magnificent video footage of the deep sea habitat. Again, no images of living giant squid. It's extremely difficult for most people, even marine biologists, to realize the immensity, the absolute immensity of the oceans. Every school child can tell you that the surface of the Earth is covered by about 70% water. Well, that's just the surface. When you realize that the oceans go down to 11,000 feet deep, all the living space where every kind of organism can exist, over 99.9% is in the oceans. So when you go for a walk in the park, everything that you can see represents less than 1% of all life on Earth. The rest of life is in the sea.
I think I read in this one article that this obsession was interfering with your health and perhaps might cost you your life.
I had, following this last expedition, I had some disorientation spells, if I can say that. Either disorientation and perhaps some dizziness. The doctor said, this is something that I don't think we have to worry about, but check on it. We checked on it, and we did locate a number of blockages in the cardiac arteries, which ended up in surgery, quadruple bypass surgery. Let's not blame the giant squid for that. And there are a number of risk factors for cardiac disease. Possibly the effort of the last several years in fundraising and organizing and running expeditions, possibly a contributing factor. I certainly would not at all ever lay it to Architeuthis itself.
Are you resigned to not finding your squid?
No, I'm not resigned to not finding it. No, not at all. It's a huge, huge ocean out there. It's a massive ocean. Not knowing the precise habitat, it means the chances are not terrific.
Well, I hope you find it.
So do I. So do I. I think it would be the scream of joy heard around the world. I would be very, very, very excited to see this creature that we've looked for such a long time. Right there, eyeball to eyeball. What would you do if the giant squid grabbed this tiny little submersible sitting in a little bubble, a little sphere 5 feet in diameter? Wouldn't the squid crack it open or damage it? My response, very, very honestly, I absolutely believe this, I would love it. I would really love that to happen. Sitting on the inside and looking at how the suckers function and how the beak functions. Give me 15 seconds to see a living giant squid, 15 seconds, and I will be able to tell you a tremendous amount about the animal. Lucky, lucky guy.